Hello, this is Reconstructing Dayton TV. My name is Alexander Sharp. Today I'm sitting down with Zach Dickerson. He is the candidate for the Montgomery County Clerk of Courts. He will be running against Mike Foley, and election day is November 3rd. So we'll go ahead and get started. Zach, why don't you tell me a brief bit about yourself?
Sure. I am a licensed attorney. I work at a legal tech company in Miamisburg called LexisNexis. I've been there for about 14 years. I graduated from law school at the University of Denver, and that was in 2008 in January, so it was the middle of the financial crisis. So they weren't really hiring a lot of lawyers at that point in time, they were firing them. So I took the first good paying job I could find, and it happened to be with LexisNexis. I ended up getting my law license while I was working there with the intent to going into practice, but I ended up enjoying both the work and the company so much I ended up staying. So I've been there a long time. And I guess I know I have a young face. Don't let that fool you. I'm 40 years old. I've been doing this a long time. And the position that I'm running for, the Clerk of Courts, is the primary function of the clerk is to work in support of judges and attorneys. That is what I do at LexisNexis, and so I'd like to do for the public sector what I've been doing for the private sector. So that's why I'm running.
Okay. So originally when you decided to go into law, what made you choose that path specifically?
Well, I think we all have that one teacher that that we can look back on and say that they really had an impact on our lives. And for me, it was an English teacher. She saw kind of a shy, awkward kid and encouraged me to get into speech and debate, and I did, and I was very successful at it. And she would tell me regularly that when I would get up to give a presentation that I had a very lawyerly presence about me. And that, I think that's what planted the seed. After I graduated from my undergrad, I got a BFA with an emphasis in directing, so I had planned to do something maybe in the television and film world. And after a while, I worked as a bartender after my undergrad, and I started thinking about it, and I said, you know, I think I'm going to go to law school. So I had a very odd route in getting there. The theater major decided to go to law school, and here I am.
So how long did you do the bartending before you took the plunge for grad school?
Gosh, 4, 5, 6 years. It was a while.
Okay.
Yeah.
And were you looking for theater work or directing work at that time, or were you just kind of waiting to find that direction?
I studied it because I was interested in it. But after I got out, I didn't have my first year acting professor kind of warned us, and he said, look, if you don't have a fire burning in the pit of your soul, that this is the only thing you can do that will ever make you happy, don't go out to LA and try to do this, because you'll spend a couple of months out there, you'll burn out, you'll be broke, and you'll have nothing to show for it. And I always had that lingering in the back of my head, and I said, well, I mean, it's something I enjoy. I don't know if I want to go out to LA just yet. So I just kind of took some time off from school to make sure I figured out which direction I wanted to go in, and it ended up not being that at all.
Okay. So you mentioned that the Clerk of Courts job mirrors a lot of the work you've been doing at LexisNexis. Is that what made you pursue a career in politics, or is there more to it than just that?
In 2018, I ran for a seat in the Ohio House of Representatives. After the 2016 election, a lot of Democrats like myself sort of looked around and went, what's going on in our country? And kind of lit a fire under us to be a little more engaged in our democracy. And so it's that 2016 happened, so in 2018 I decided to run for that seat. I live in a very gerrymandered district, so it would have been an uphill climb, to put it kindly, for me to be able to win that, but I did it anyway. I wanted the experience, and it was good. I was locked and loaded and ready to go to run for that same seat again in 2020, and someone mentioned to me that someone hadn't stepped forward to run for the Clerk of Courts, and I should consider that, and I hadn't really. So I thought about it, I looked into the position, and I thought, with my background in both law and working at a large legal technology company, that makes me a natural fit for this job. So that's why I decided to go that route instead.
Okay. So a lot of people aren't even sure what the clerk of courts does. I mean, you mentioned that you had to look into it a little bit yourself.
Yeah.
Why is this a position that voters should be concerned about?
It's, if you want an efficient and effective courthouse, you have to have a competent clerk to run it. So it's at a very basic fundamental level. If you care about good government, that's why people should care about this job. But I'm not a very good politician, so I probably shouldn't say this, but it's true. Most people in the community will not interact with an employee of the clerk of courts. The primary consumers of the clerk of court services are judges and attorneys, people in the legal profession. The clerk also manages the auto title division, so if you were to sell your car to me in a private sale and you needed a copy of the title, you could go to the auto title office and get it. That's a clerk's office employee. Most people buy and sell their cars at a dealership, and the dealerships deal with the clerk's office. So for the vast majority of people in Montgomery County, they will go their entire lives without ever interacting with the clerk of courts or one of his employees. So really what it comes down to, you're a taxpayer, I'm a taxpayer, the folks at home watching pay taxes, our money pays the clerk of court's salary. And if you don't want your money wasted, if you want that office run efficiently and effectively, you should care about who's in this job.
Okay, so my next question was going to be why the average citizen should care about the clerk of courts.
I'll beat you to it then.
Yeah, so basically it just comes down to efficiency and making sure your tax dollars are spent appropriately.
Absolutely.
There seems to be a strong emphasis on technology with the clerk of the courts job. I've noticed that in your campaign materials, you've emphasized the role of technology. So why is this so important to the clerk of courts?
Very good question. The modern day clerk of courts deals with a lot of technology in running the daily operations of the courthouse. So there are three key pieces of technology the clerk is responsible for managing. The e-filing system that allows attorneys to submit their documents electronically to the court, the case management system that we use to track ongoing matters, and the document management system where all the historical records get archived. So in the past, when this position was created, everything was done by paper. But nowadays, we have transitioned to technology to do those things electronically, and that's why I think it's important for somebody that has a background like mine to be in this position that understands that space.
Okay. What kind of specific improvements would you make that would increase the efficiency that you're talking about?
That's an excellent question. So I would say a couple of things. Number one, in May, the clerk of courts was hit with a cyber attack, and it took down the court's computer systems for about 2 weeks and caused a pretty severe business interruption. So one of the things that I would do going in is making sure we have industry standard cybersecurity, because we just cannot afford for something like that to happen. The clerk's first and foremost primary duty is as the official keeper of court records, and the clerk needs to protect and maintain those records. So cybersecurity, top priority. Beyond that, of the three components that I mentioned, the second one, the case management software, the one we use now is called CourtView. It is a very old version of that software, and they are essentially retiring it. They're pulling it off the shelves. The county government is going to have to select a new piece of case management software for the courts, and I think it is a benefit to the county and the community when we select that new software to have somebody that has a background in legal technology to have a seat at the table when we select the new software that the court's going to use.
Okay. So when it came to this, like cyber attack, for example, is this something that you feel like Mike Foley could have prevented as the clerk of courts?
Well, the judges in the Court of Common Pleas have directed Mike Foley to bring in an outside vendor to diagnose this problem. Normally this is something that the clerk would take care of themselves, but apparently the judges don't think that Mr. Foley's capable of doing that, so they've insisted someone else come in from the outside. It's hard for me to say from the outside looking in what he did wrong. I think it probably could have, you can look at cybersecurity in sort of three phases: prevention, detection, and mitigation. Prevention, preventing the virus from coming in; detection, knowing when it's there; and then mitigation, stopping it from spreading and corrupting your files. So one of the things that we do at LexisNexis, and I don't know if this is done in the clerk's office, if it isn't, I'd look at instituting this kind of policy. On the prevention side, the first step, my company trains employees like me to be on the lookout for those kinds of cyber attacks with those fake emails that come in that have a suspicious attachment or a suspicious link in them. So the company sends us a fake cyber attack email to try to get us to click on the link. If we have identified it, there's a button in our Microsoft Outlook we can click to report a suspicious email, and then we get a little pop-up that says, "Congratulations." Or if we click on it by accident, which I have done on a number of times, I've been fooled, it says, you know, "Oops, you just let the virus in," and it gives you some more information about how to spot these kinds of emails. So that's one of the changes I would make. So those are two big ones. I think, but honestly, the biggest one for the community to consider in what I would do, the value that I could bring in this role, it is a huge Herculean task in changing our case management system, because not only do you have to select a good one for the new program, you have to train everybody on it, and you've got to migrate all of the content from the old system to the new system. This is a monstrous task, and you don't want to leave it to somebody that doesn't know what they're doing.
Okay. So with the, I noticed you have this background, you know, originally the theater and film, and then law school. Where did technology come into it?
I'm a nerd.
That's it.
I'm a nerd.
So it's just an
I always have
autodidact
been.
thing?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
All right. Any like formal training when you got to LexisNexis, or were you kind of into technology before that?
I mean, I've always been into it. Yeah. You know, computers and electronics, absolutely.
Okay. So we're going to get on to some questions that aren't specifically about the clerk's office, but just in general, because our organization, we're really interested in ways to restructure the county and city governments, and we just like to know where our public officials stand and the candidates stand on these issues. So first off, how would you feel about if we had a county charter that would combine the roles of the treasurer, the auditor, and recorder into a single office?
Yeah, that's one of the things that you asked about in your voter guide. I find your arguments persuasive about why it would be a good thing, but this is a monumental shift sort of in how we structure our local government. One of the things that my training as an attorney has taught me is that, you know, it's really important to understand both sides of the issue. Even if you have one that you agree with and you want to advocate for, you've got to understand the arguments on the other side. I would need to talk to people that disagree with you. But I can say, just as a general principle, one of the things that I admire about this organization is that, again, like I said, being taxpayers that put money into the system, we don't want to see it wasted. If there is a better, smarter way to do something, I am behind you 100% in help making it happen.
Okay. And then when it comes to other county positions, such as the engineer and the coroner, one thing we've looked at is the idea of making those appointed positions where something that goes through a traditional hiring process rather than elected, because most voters don't really know anything about the qualifications of their engineer or their coroner.
Yeah.
So how would you feel about a change like that?
I think you could say the same thing about my role as the clerk of courts. The first and most frequent question that I get from people is, well, what does the clerk of courts do? If we're going to have these positions be appointed, that makes sense to me. If it puts me out of a job, I'm okay with that, because I think it would be I think actually you share common cause with the League of Women Voters. I believe they may feel the same way about some of these positions. One of the things that with the coroner and the engineer, at least by law, there are certain criteria that you have to have. You have to have an engineering background or a medical background to do either one of those jobs. For the clerk of courts, I think it's common sense. The person that we put in charge of the courthouse should have a legal background, but that's not written into law anywhere. A pizza delivery driver, no offense if that is your chosen profession, could decide one day, wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to run for clerk of courts. And if they could raise the money without any background or qualification, they could be elected the clerk of courts. And I think that's a serious problem. So I fully support that. I think it might be a better way to do it.
Okay. So you think at the minimum, the barrier to entry for a clerk of courts should be raised?
I think if this was an appointed position, I think there was a stronger likelihood that we would get someone that is properly qualified to do this job. And we certainly don't have that right now with the current clerk.
Okay. So again, looking at more big picture issues, Ohio has 88 counties. They have been the same counties since 1851. The lines for the counties have not been adjusted since 1888.
Mm-hmm.
Would you support, and this is probably more at a state level, but would you support adjusting the county lines so that municipalities don't bleed over into multiple counties?
It's an interesting proposition. Given my race, since the clerk of courts doesn't have any real direct impact in that area, I can't say I've considered it extensively.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess what I would say is that makes sense. My question to you then is, in changing those lines, how frequently is that done? Because as population shifts and moves and development comes and goes, I see that as a potential sticking point for people.
Yeah, that's.
Do we treat it like House and Senate districts, and is it a biannual thing every 5 years, every 10 years?
Yeah, like we were considering a couple different, because that's a frequent question we get about this issue, and one answer would be that you could make it so every 10 years you consider readjust to go along with any municipalities. So if a municipality annexes land in the county over, you change that every 10 years. Or the other option would be that just any time a municipality annexes land in another county or grows into that county, it would just there'd be a provision where it automatically gets adjusted. That
makes sense, yeah.
So let's see here. So even bigger than that, so we had these same 88 counties for 150 plus years. What about combining multiple counties? Like, one thing we look at is the fact that Western Greene County and Eastern Montgomery County are all a single economic zone, a single metropolitan area.
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of think that would make more sense if that single metropolitan area were all in one county. Would you support measures of merging counties together or completely redrawing the lines?
Your argument about it being a single economic zone,
Mm-hmm.
I think that makes sense. Like, I'm all for efficiency. If there's a way we can do things simpler and fairer and save money, I think there are merits to doing that. But like I said, this is sort of a novel issue for me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the downsides to that would be. So I couldn't say I'm a 100% supporter behind it, but broadly speaking, as I said earlier, I fully support anything that we can do that is going to simplify government.
Looking at regionalism more generally, you've been in the area for a while now. Did you pay much attention to the Dayton Together effort to create a county charter? This was between 2009 and 2016.
No.
Okay.
I wasn't, I don't think I was here for most of that.
Okay. Have you looked at other regional governments? Where, for example, Indianapolis, Louisville recently did it. Cleveland recently created a county charter. Have you looked at any
I have
of
not.
those? No. Okay. One thing that's more, I guess, more related to the clerk of courts. In our survey, we mentioned creating a single municipal court for the county, and that would be one thing that would have a direct impact on the clerk of courts.
Mm-hmm.
We think it would be more efficient. What do you think about that?
I agree. Again, if someone can, I want to understand both sides of the issue.
Mm-hmm.
My view right now is that I absolutely agree with you. I could be persuaded otherwise if someone had a convincing argument, but that just makes sense to me.
I'm not sure if anyone's really opposed to it. I think it's just one of those things that the system exists the way it does because no one's thought to change it.
We're doing it this way because we've been doing it this way.
Yeah. So I've not heard any major opposition to it. It's just I don't think there's any anyone that's cared enough to go for the changes.
Yeah, I mean, that's called thought leadership, and I applaud you for doing it.
So with the Board of Elections site, I don't know, have you been to the Board of Elections site?
I
Probably,
have.
because you have to. As
Almost every day.
Yeah. If you look at one thing we mentioned in the survey, and you mentioned that they probably already had a way of looking up campaign donors, and there is a way, but they give you access to the documents that are scanned that you as a candidate had to turn in.
Yeah.
But as someone who's an enthusiast and a professional with technology, you probably know that scanned documents of handwriting is not searchable. Yeah, and it's not ADA compliant either. So that's something you would support is revising the website so it is searchable, so you can easily find campaign donors and add transparency.
Absolutely. I think anything we can do to increase transparency and allow the citizenship to see what's going on in government and who's donating to who can only benefit us. So, with what we saw with Householder and the $61 million bribery scam going on, that kind of thing is going to be a lot harder to do if it's easy to go into a searchable database and track what's going on and who's getting this money. So, yeah, fully support it.
Oh, that's good to hear. It sounded like you're receptive to the idea of the property taxes being based on the sale value of a house rather than these ongoing assessments. So one pushback we've gotten on this idea is that over time, property tax collections might go down because if you hang on to a house for decades, you'll be getting a very favorable rate.
I was going to ask you about that and make precisely that point, yes.
Okay, so do you see that as a concern, or do you see the benefits outweighing the concern?
I don't know that I see the benefits outweighing the concern, but I think I may have mentioned this in the voter guide that I answered. A couple of years ago, one of my coworkers had said to me, she, very vocal woman, and was complaining about her property taxes because she's got brick siding on her house and her neighbor doesn't, and she said they made that improvement and so their property value went up and now she's being forced to pay more in taxes for it, and she feels like, why am I being punished for making an improvement to my home? So I certainly feel her pain, but I also want to try to understand the other side of the issue. Like you said, if you buy a home in an up-and-coming area, a home is $100,000, and then over the course of 10, 20, or 30 years it triples in value, there's a cost to that. So
I guess but one thing that we think would be beneficial is that it, I guess, it motivates people to buy a house and know that it's a solid investment and not fear that if I buy this house, say you can buy a house really cheap, We have lots of houses in Dayton that are in pretty poor shape, have been vacant for a long time. So we see it as something that it would motivate people to buy these houses because they would know, okay, like I got this house really cheap and I invested a lot into it, but now, now I'm going to get the tax increase, so it might not be worth it for me to hang on to it.
That's a good argument. You're talking about the disincentive for doing that, to investing in a home in a neighborhood like that needs it. So you're right. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. So you're still on the fence about it then, huh?
That again, I hate to keep doing this to you, but they teach you in law school the correct answer to every question is not yes or no. The correct answer is it depends.
Yeah.
This is one of those instances where, I find it persuasive, but I can certainly see I would personally need to do more research before I locked myself in and said, yeah, let's go get them.
Okay. And then again, this one is not really directly related to the clerk of courts, but in the recent years, there have been some pretty shocking stories coming out of the county jail. In fact, there have been $10 million spent in settling lawsuits due to excessive force and wrongful deaths.
One might say Phil Plummer has a little baggage. Yes.
Yeah, he's no longer the sheriff. Now we have
yes.
track. Do you think there's something that we can do about that?
That is not really my area, so I don't know that I'm qualified to give an opinion about reforms that need to happen there. I think that on its face, it is clear that something needs to change, yes.
So as say you are elected to this position, so as a leader in the county, you would publicly advocate for that, though?
Absolutely.
Okay. So finally, just why are you going to win?
Well, I hope that voters just look at our resumes, our backgrounds, our qualifications, our experience. As I said earlier, it is, I think, common sense that the person that we put in charge of the courthouse should have a legal background. I think judges expect it and attorneys expect it. So, and beyond my legal background, like I said, my background in legal technology, I think is a huge asset in this job. And I'm the only candidate that brings either one of those things to this role. But just more broadly speaking, I would say that our taxes pay the clerk of court's salary. We pay the clerk of courts about well over $100,000 a year. We are not getting a $100,000 a year job out of the man in the job right now. People should expect excellence out of the person in that position, and if I'm elected, that is exactly what I'll deliver.
All right. I said that was going to be the last one. I'm going to give you one more, though.
Sure.
I know you said that you were just have a young face, but you're 40. But that's still fairly young compared to a lot of people that are running. Do you have any further political ambitions, or are you just focused on the clerk of courts?
No. My mom actually asked me the other day. She said, "Why do you even want to run for office at all? It's why do you?" My uncle used to tease me. Why do you want to be a dirty politician? I said, I don't, Uncle Bob. But this is one of those jobs where if you can sit on the sideline and complain, or you can get involved, and if you don't like the people that are in public office, those are your options. You can complain about it, or you can do something about it. And so beyond just voting or advocating for somebody else, I wanted to jump in because I think I have something legitimate to offer my community. Being 40 years old, like I said, I've been at LexisNexis for 14 years. I built a great career there. But I'm ready to start a new chapter in my life. I want to take the experience that I've had in the private sector and put it to use in the public sector. And I don't view this as, politician's kind of a dirty word. I want to be a public servant. I want to do good. I want my family to be proud of me, and that motivates me to conduct myself in this role with integrity. So, I mean, do I want to? No, I don't want to do anything else. Maybe I'll do something in the legislative side later, but if I end up enjoying the job at the Clerk of Court's office like I do at LexisNexis, I'm going to be there for years. I don't have ambitions to do anything else. I just want to be a public servant. I just want to do good.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
This has been Zach Dickerson. My name is Alexander Sharp, and thank you very much for watching.
That was easy.